Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. I'm your host Faisal Raza Khan and you are watching Foresight. Viewers, Pak-US relations were always categorized as a roller coaster ride or having a crust and trough, or we can say that it's always at the bumpy roads. Its transactional nature linked with Washington's security interests and never be categorized as enduring strategic and economic partnership. From the Afghan jihad in 1980 to the post 9/11 war on terror, Pakistan has often found itself caught in the shifting priorities of the US foreign policy. Trump's latest acknowledgement after the arrest of Ishaque or Daesh lead terrorist Sharifullah alias Jafar, that may offer a brief diplomatic high, but many experts at that time warned that don't read too much into the Pak-US relations right now, because it could be again changed because of the unpredictable nature of the Trump administration. And that too proved true because just recently United States put visa restrictions on Pakistan and put Pakistan in the orange category. That is going to be more scrutinized visa for Pakistanis. Since the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, US-China competition and choosing India as the so-called net security provider under the US Pacific policy, the Asia-Pacific or Indo-Pacific, what Washington call it, the Indo-Pacific policy, as a so-called counterweight to China. And in that containment of China policy, India is more prioritized than any other country in the region. Now, United States right now looking Pakistan through the Indian lens, and this is unfortunate, and that is why that is there. We'll get answer of that as well. This occasional US cooperation has little essence for Pakistan, a country that is still fighting the counter-terrorism war that was started post 9/11, a country that is still fighting to be economically stable. And because of these challenges, unfortunately, Pakistan's social fabric is at stake. The future is at stake. And that all emanated from Washington. To discuss the grave situation and the transactional relation between Pakistan and the United States and whether this relation is a reality or a rhetoric, we'll having discussion on many questions and we'll try to get answers of those. We have in our studios to discuss Dr. Awais bin Wasi. He is the Indian affairs expert and have a very close eye on Indo-US partnership as well. Most welcome to you. Thank you very much, Dr. Wasi. And with him, Dr. Tauqeer Hussain Sargana. He is the assistant professor of international relations associated with the Department of International Relations at International Islamic University, Islamabad. Thank you very much, sir, for your presence here. And online joining us, Dr. Waseem Ishaque is the international affairs analyst. Thank you very much, Dr. Waseem, joining us. Thank you very much. So nice of you. My first question is to you, Dr. Tauqeer. What would be the ultimate implications of the US Trump administration's decision to put Pakistan on orange category in recent US travel restrictions lists? Although it's not a complete travel ban, but citizens may face stricter scrutiny when applying for the US visa, while reports suggest that specific types of visas for Pakistani nationals could also be restricted, with only business-related travels being with permitted under the new category. Will it affect the thousands of Pakistanis seeking the entry onto the United States, and also to those Pakistanis who have very close linkages with the United States, particularly when their relatives are living there in the United States, and they are the citizens of that country.
Thank you very much, Faisal, for asking this important question. Pakistan and United States are two countries which are strategically bounded with each other. And any kind of policy shift or policy change is going to impact negatively. First of all, we have to understand the changing circumstances of global politics at the moment. Since in Washington, D.C., we have a new administration under the Trump regime. Pakistan needs to play its political cards, geopolitical cards, I must say, very carefully as a country, as a nation that wants to maintain cordial and good relations with the United States of America. At a time period or in a world where China is supposedly dominating the geoeconomic spheres. So it's worth paying attention that when regional competitors surrounding Pakistan, they're also doing their best to change the circumstances that in turn would shape US policy options towards South Asia. So at the global level and both at the regional level, the dynamics are becoming more volatile. So with that perspective in mind, it is important to note that the image of the United States is also changing from a liberator to a more great disruptor, to a landlord seeking rent. This is the challenge the world is facing today, so does Pakistan would also face it. So what is impacting on the US foreign policy approach at the moment? It is the politics of populism. So due to that politics of populism, the US is no longer prepared to underwrite the global order. This makes the international environment far less orderly and predictable. Within that perspective, which is why in a few short weeks, President Trump as an individual has effected a revolution in foreign policy by running amok on the very institutional outlook of US foreign policy. So it has largely abandoned a long-standing democratic ally, Ukraine, whose security the United States have pledged upon to or uphold to since the signing of Budapest Memorandum on Security Assurances in 1994, almost 30 years ago. So when it comes to reality or rhetoric, we have to understand the reality of foreign policy is vested on the institutional approach of US foreign policy outlook, whereas rhetoric is the byproduct of populism, which is becoming the strength in today's political environment surrounding US, unfortunately. So with that distinction between reality and rhetoric, when we see these new speculative policy changes that Pakistan may be placed in one of the lists, yellow, orange, list of the banning citizens of Pakistan, I believe that would be having negative impact on the trajectory of strategic relations between Pakistan and the United States.
Your point well taken. Your point well taken. Dr. Wasi, how do you see the Trump administration's many Indian influence and hawkish and harsh Pakistan critics? Then within the Trump administration, most of the Indian origin Americans are the part of it. Like even the Vice President J.D. Vance, his wife, Osha Vance, she is of having Indian origin. Then Director Intelligence, Ms. Tulsi Gabbard, South and Central Asia Representative Paul Kapoor, then Senior White House Policy Advisor on Artificial Intelligence, Sri Ram Krishnan, then Department of Government Efficiency, Vivek Ramaswamy, FBI Director Kash Patel, Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Mr. Harmeet Dhillon, Director National Institute of Health, J. Bhattacharya, and all others. There are lots of, it's a huge list. We have a long list really. So how do you see such kind of influence of the Indian Americans and the Indians over the Trump administration? That is going to affect Pakistan a lot, really.
Exactly. You know, the presence of these officials in the Trump administration, I think that we need to look back, especially when the strategic partnership between India and the United States started, especially after Indo-US nuclear deal in 2005. And after 2005, we saw a kind of consistent US policy in which there is a clout of Indian presence in the US administration. And recently, in the recent past, for example, in Biden administration, we saw the joint communique that signed in September 2023, and later on in Trump's administration, when Prime Minister Modi visited over there. And then there was a pledge of selling F-35 stealth fighter. So these, clearly indicate that there is a growing clout and growing influence of Indian in US administration. The question is that what would be the implication, or what are the dynamics of inclusion of these people? I think that one reason could be the geopolitical dynamics, that Trump administration is more concerned and tends to intensify to use India as a countervailing force, as a counterweight against China. This could be one reason. Secondly, that by doing it, I think that it would embolden India to talk about this cross-border or the terrorism or on Kashmir, that India, which has been harping on that a kind of insurgency is taking place. The third thing could be that by the presence of these people in Trump administration, they try to complicate US policy towards South Asia. For example, that India tries to project and try to say that these terrorist organizations, for example, BLA or TTP, they are insurgents and they are not terrorists. So I think that such kind of confusion or such kind of complication, these officials, they want to create in Trump administration towards the South Asia. And by doing so, as in the past, which the United States tried to create a balance, for example, before FPAC that we saw, but that balancing act would also be compromised by the inclusion of these officials.
Dr. Wasi, your point well taken. Dr. Tauqeer, what about Trump administration's order to cancel more than 80% of the program at the US Agency for International Development following 6-week review? Now it is going to impact Pakistan in real terms, like it's suspended at least $845 million related to 39 projects at least, including energy, economy, agriculture, democracy, human rights and governance. Then of course humanitarian assistance have been suspended, and it's there when Pakistan's economy is very fragile and have little to invest in social development projects. So how do you see such kind of a move? And this not only affected Pakistan, but also the rest of the world as well, the Afghanistan, the Afghan refugees who are living in Pakistan as well. So how do you see such kind of a drastic move towards the developing world?
You have rightly pointed out the term drastic move by the United States of America towards the developing world. It is one of the most important aspects of US smart power and soft power image in the world. It is not only impacting the developing part of the world or Pakistan specifically, but the first casualty of suspending US aid programs will be the United States of America itself. Because the kind of contribution and the kind of value-based, norm-based system it has established in the world based on the dignity of humanity, that would be under stress in the Trump's administration. Again, this is a kind of rhetoric which becomes part of the populism within the US administration. But at the end of the day, the tangible outcomes are negative. Pakistan, for example, has been very much dependent on US aid in many spheres. We have rightly pointed out that the social setup, the education, the health, the governance, and there are so many other developmental projects going on in Pakistan that would be directly impacted by US aid. It is something that undermines the very quality relations between Pakistan and United States. The US must review its funding towards those states or nations which are in dire need of those developmental projects and fundings coming through US aid programs. We have many immigrants or migrants, refugees coming from Afghanistan who are also dependent on US aid programs. So with that policy abundance.
Actually, majority of aid portion or the assistance portion was actually belongs to US aid. And that's why those refugees were surviving.
Exactly.
Now, due to the restrictions, they are going to be in a a situation of hopelessness and
vulnerability.
Yes.
Because when these refugees are going to get vulnerable, so who is going to take care of them? So the forces which are always working to destabilize this region, they would get benefit out of it. So Pakistan has been a staunch proponent of such developmental projects, helping those who are in need. So I believe that United States of America would review such policy.
Definitely. Your point well taken. Dr. Waseem, do you not think that under the US-China containment policy, launched an Indo-Pacific policy and termed India as a so-called net security provider, counterweight to China, and for that matter, US covering up India at all front basically, and backing its strategic moves, Pakistan is the primary battleground of the China-US rivalry right now. It's all evident regarding the resistance to the China-Pakistan economic corridor, especially in Balochistan. And India directly and the US indirectly supporting these whole strategic, but unfortunately the very dirty games, because most of the reports suggest that because of the United States backing to India, India is playing this dirty game in Balochistan and rest of Pakistan.
Thank you, Faisal, for the kind invitation. I think very important subject which we are discussing today. From my perspective, rather than giving you a straightforward answer, yes or no, let me give you a bit of a strategic picture, which is especially we are witnessing since 9/11. Pakistan, even till today, holds a position of frontline non-NATO ally of the United States. And the same thing which we witnessed during the 1979 Soviet invasion of Afghanistan and resultant Pakistan's role. So in both cases, in last 5 decades, Pakistan holds a key position of US policy interest towards South Asia. Unfortunately, those...
Because that non-NATO ally status was already gone, so I think so that we can take it as a de facto one, but Pakistan is still fighting the war which was straight away started after post 9/11, really, post 9/11.
Exactly. I just wanted to amplify on this point that in last 5 decades, the US-Pakistan relations were purely security centric and were seen through the prism of Afghanistan only. Now, in a wider Asia Pacific and East Asia specifically, ever since Hillary Clinton's pivot to Asia policy announced in 2011 and later on US Indo-Pacific strategy further amplified into quadrilateral alliance and AQUAS, India emerged as the fulcrum of this success of Indo-Pacific strategy. So from that perspective, and also the Indian policymakers, which you highlighted during your introduction, that many Indian diaspora, Indian lobby are now in the policy making in the Trump administration. So they have a greater role. And see, post 9/11, when Pakistan became frontline state, there were two things which were happening and we have probably forgotten in our memory. One was de-hyphenation of India and Pakistan from South Asian perspective, and re-hyphenation of Pakistan and Afghanistan in the form of AFPAC. So there was a very calibrated strategy and a long-term planning what the United States wanted to be the future of this South Asian region and what kind of actually the role which they had designated for India. And fast forward to 2018 US National Security Strategy, and absolutely no uncertain terms, India has been given a huge role which India has embraced and which is very much evident even today during Prime Minister Modi's joint press conference with President Trump during his visit to the Washington DC just few weeks ago. So all these things clearly give us a clear indication that US interest and Indo-US strategic partnership over a period of time has grown exponentially, while Pakistan's options have always been constrained because since the beginning it has always been a security centric only. Now coming over to the battleground between China and US interest, I believe in the past Pakistan demonstrated an apt foreign policy and a huge statecraft in balancing relations between China and the United States. And Pakistan was rather a frontline state in arranging US-China rapprochement, which ended up in Nixon's visit to Beijing back in 1974. So in that context, we have apt diplomatic skills and we have demonstrated previously also. However, where we are lacking now in our understanding is that the US foreign policy for this region has changed, and those are based on their respective perceived national interest, where Pakistan now does not figure out beyond only the cooperation on terrorism related aspects. So that is the biggest challenge for us in our foreign policy domain. While neither China is playing out CPEC in a zero-sum perspective, nor apparently explicitly the United States has done anything which is opposed to the CPEC. However, the non-traditional security and through other elements of national power, they are trying to create hindrances. And all those things in turn.
Dr. Waseem, although the US President Donald Trump praises Pakistan on the arrest of the ISK or Daesh terrorists, the lead terrorist Sharifullah alias Jafar, but after the Trump administration, the US State Department expressed a hope that was really on March 6, 2025, with Pakistan and US have common interests in fighting terrorism. The arrest of this terrorist, quote unquote, Sharifullah, also illustrated that the US-Pakistan cooperation on the counter-terrorism remains vitally important. But after visa restrictions now, that was a quote by the State Department spokesperson, but after the visa restrictions, it seems that now Pakistan-US relations will vary case to case. This is no more kind of a roller coaster ride or some kind of a bumpy road, but it's now case to case basis. Do you think so?
I have absolutely no doubt. And this is what I highlighted earlier also, that the US policy towards Pakistan has always been through the fight of terrorism. While they have appreciated, that's a good thing, but in last about 2.5 decades, Pakistan has sacrificed everything with a loss of $150 billion and over 80,000 casualties for the fight of the United States. That was war on terrorism. However, its blowback brunt came onto the mainland Pakistan, and the US acknowledges that. While the environments are now shaped in a way that US is still willing to continue supporting Pakistan in fights against terrorism, and now since we are facing the dilemma both in KPK from the band Khawarij al-Fitna and also in the BLA in Balochistan, so this is the right time that we must engage at the diplomatic level and also at the military diplomacy level, and we should now continue two-pronged engagement with the United States and supported by the media and the intellectuals through these talk shows as we are doing today. And therefore, we must engage the United States, and if at all they have certain misperceptions about Pakistan's fight against terrorism or Pakistan's diplomatic engagement with the United States, this is the right time.
Waseem, your point well taken. Your point well taken. Dr. Tauqeer, as Dr. Waseem suggested, that with the arrest of the Daesh high-profile terrorists, it also tells us a grave reality that Daesh is actually growing unprecedentedly in Afghanistan, especially in the bordering regions, and that poses serious threat to entire region and globally as well, along with the fitna al-Kharij, like TTP, BLA, Baloch Liberation Army, and Majid Brigade. Do you not think that the regional cooperation and Pak-US collaboration to eliminate such threats is now inevitable, as Dr. Waseem said, as it's posing serious ramifications globally, and Afghanistan is again become the epicenter of terrorism? Exactly.
Afghanistan is becoming the epicenter of terrorism with a kind of maneuverability which is geopolitical in nature. To clarify a distinction, when it comes to United States and Pakistan's relations, we have to be very careful in terms of identifying our status in US foreign policy. Two issues that we have already discussed, and you have rightly pointed out through your questions, that the suspension of US aid, which is not Pakistan specific.
Obviously it is not.
It's a bigger picture within the US domestic politics, which Donald Trump is actually promising to his own people. And as a result, the developing part of at a greater level is going to pay the price for that particular policy option by the United States. Again, the ban on citizens is not specific to Pakistan, but again, indirect impact would be happening on Pakistan. But when it comes to counterterrorism efforts, Pakistan and United States have direct coordination, collaboration, and a sustainable, trustworthy relationship when it comes to their efforts to counter terrorism in South Asia. Particularly, we are talking about the post 9/11 global war on terrorism. So the recent, handover of Muhammad Sharif, alias Jafar, a top mastermind behind the 2021 attack on US,
bombing, yes.
exactly, where 13 US soldiers were killed, around 170 Afghan nationals were killed. So handing over that top terrorist by Pakistan to United States of America again qualifies Pakistan's and US strategic relations towards a right step, which is to counter terrorism in the region. So for that reason, US and Pakistan collaboration is positively heading. And I positively see that the terrorist organizations like Balochistan Liberation Army, Majid Brigade Group, TTP, and so many other factions right now operating within Afghanistan on the name of political regime, they would be under enormous pressure, and they have to realize that Afghanistan shall not be an epicenter of harboring terrorism, neither it should be allowed to use its territory against Pakistan or
But
any other
unfortunately,
separation.
when it comes to the United Nations Security Council, several reports, those reports confirmed that Afghanistan is right now exporting terrorism from its soil, unfortunately, and that leverage is available in Kabul as well, and because Kabul is directly supporting some of the factions, Al-Qaeda and TTP as well. So, Dr. Awais, do you not think that the Pakistan-US relations were at the lowest trajectory since the US withdrawal from Afghanistan? Would ever be free from the Indian influence, number one? And Washington also prefer to look its relations with Pakistan independently rather than through the Indian lens, and cautious due to the US-China competition, because that is the United States policy right now. However, after the recent arrest of that terrorist Sharifullah and subsequently handing over to the United States, could it be a chance to have reset in the bilateral relations, or at least the military to military or diplomatic relations, security and counter-terrorism domain? Because or we can consider it just a bubble for the time being, and it's actually busted now.
Yes, this relationship between Pakistan and United States, as you have rightly pointed out, at the lowest, since the US withdrawal in 2021 from Afghanistan. I think there are three factors. One is the US is skeptical about Pakistan, that Pakistan, especially the double game the US perceives, but as a matter of fact, Pakistan played a key role in Doha peace agreement and engagement with Taliban.
And the fact is vice versa. Even the United States played a double game with Pakistan.
Exactly. So that is contradictory. And the second is that the closer ties Pakistan and China, that is also one of the reasons that this relationship is the lowest ebb. And the third factor is the Indian lobby in US administration. I think these are the three factors which are contributing to this relationship at the lowest ebb. Now the question is that whether this could be the opening for the broader bilateral relationships between Pakistan and US. I think it's premature to say at the moment, but I believe that this could be a stepping stone. This could be a beginning to reset the broader ties between the two countries. The reason is that ISK, so far the United States is restricted its relationship to counterterrorism and intelligence sharing. After US withdrawal, US is not in advantageous position in Afghanistan. Pakistan has that advantageous position through intelligence share and signal sharing on ground in Afghanistan. So that is why the US feels the need of Pakistan, and pragmatically it engaged Pakistan. But I think that keeping in view the situation about the potential threat of terrorism emanating from Afghanistan, because you must have come across this news that these terrorists, they have unhindered access of sophisticated weapons.
US weapons.
US weapons, that is worth $7.5 billion.
Yes.
So if you see that, this unhindered access of these weapons, so there could be a potential threat, and that threat is not restricted to, Pakistan or that region. So the US, could also be, under threat. So I think that this relationship is required to be expanded to the broader level. As a couple of days ago, there was a meeting between Deputy Prime Minister and Charge d'Affaires of US. So I think that there are some negotiations, there are some contacts which are underway.
And definitely after the arrest of that Muhammad Sharifullah, the terrorist belongs to Daesh, there was a telephonic contact as well between the Deputy Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister Ishaque with the US officials. So I think so that is going to be something very important. And you mentioned about the US arms in Afghanistan. So we have a clip of the US President Donald Trump when he made a statement on the US weapons retrieval from Afghanistan. What he said about that withdrawal, just listen, viewers.
To take our equipment, we're going to do it properly. We send them billions of dollars in aid. And if we're doing that, I think they should give our equipment back. But we left billions, tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment behind. Brand new trucks. You see them display it every year on their little roadway someplace. Afghanistan is one of the biggest sellers of military equipment in the world. You know why? They're selling the equipment that we left.
In the same go, as the US President Donald Trump, what he said about the arms, but first of all, what the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said in an interview, and it's courtesy Fox News, what he said on the Abbey Gate bombing, the arrest of the lead terrorist of Daesh, Muhammad Sharifullah, and then what he said about these arms, ammunition, and the latest equipment there in Afghanistan.
Abbey Gate bombing that injured so many and killed 13. Captured, is coming here. Special thanks to Pakistan. What could you tell us?
Well, special thanks to Pakistan, indeed. We cooperated with us. But this started, I want to be very clear, under this administration. We had our leadership, Director Radcliffe and others in CENTCOM and in the military, passing information to the Pakistanis who helped us action it after this president was elected. So this is a president who saw what happened, the debacle in Afghanistan, and said, when I'm president, I will make sure those held accountable, those who perpetrated the death of 13 Americans and the injury of dozens others, we will find them. We will keep our word. We partnered with the Pakistanis based on intelligence we provided. They nabbed them, positively identified them. We've known.
And what the US Defense Secretary said on arms retrieval or the presence of US weapons there at the Afghan soil.
And you're doing an investigation, your own investigation into what went into the decision to evacuate that way in Afghanistan?
Because, Brian, no one was held accountable. It was one of the biggest disasters in American history, an embarrassment, a black eye to our country. We handed over billions of dollars equipment to the Taliban. We counted on them for our security, and then we got people killed. We gave away Bagram Air Base, and no one in military leadership was fired? Nah, that's not going to sail under President Trump. So we're doing a full review and investigation of what happened in Afghanistan. Those who were involved and made the decisions that put our troops at risk will be held.
So what the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said, is it going to be the US policy in future, or it is just a matter of time that they have made these statements like a rhetoric? So that's not clear right now, because action speaks louder than words. So when you're talking about that, Dr. Tauqeer, how imperative the US President Donald Trump's announcement, and you have just listened to the Defense Secretary as well, to withdraw US military billions of dollars equipment left over in Afghanistan, then the control of the Bagram airspace, they want it, and inside Afghanistan, US Department of Defense reports tell us actually that is not only the $7.5 billion of the equipment that was left, the weapons, ammunition and all that, but $18.6 billion worth of critical defense gadgets, night visions, all other technology, including sophisticated weapons, actually provided to Afghanistan in the due course of time. And that's the one affecting Pakistan right now, the mostly affecting Pakistan due to its use by the terrorists, by different like TTP, BLN, all others. Would the retrieval become reality in near future, or it's just rhetoric once again, or just a statement for the time being due to the unpredictability of the Trump administration?
The unpredictability of Trump's administration is usually in the political domain. But when it comes to geopolitical or geostrategic aspects of United States of American interest, there are realities behind it. And I believe Trump administration's commitment to retrieve their weapons from the and take control over the Bagram base are based on reality. You have rightly pointed out that there are around 18.6 billion US dollar worth of equipment and technological infrastructure there. So that is needed to be considered into geopolitical and geostrategic landscape. So one thing is that those weapons should not be ending up into the hands of terrorists, which is our priority concern for Pakistan as well, because Afghanistan, as we have already discussed, is now the epicenter of terrorism, and the irresponsible behavior and political actions of the Afghan Taliban regime sustains Pakistan's security apprehensions that these weapons would be ending up into terrorists like Daesh, TTP, BLA or Majid Group and some other factions which may be supported by, and they are supported by, some state-sponsored intelligence agencies operating against Pakistan. So for that reason, it's a very serious concern for Pakistan, and that concern underscores the very need of United States policy to come into Afghanistan, and they should retrieve their
weapons. Let's go to Dr. Waseem on that. What's your opinion, Dr. Waseem, after the Pakistani and the US leadership telephonic conversation with both agreed upon to enhance bilateral relations in the counterterrorism domain, withdrawal of the US military equipment left behind in Afghanistan, set up cooperation in information technology, energy, mineral resources, mineral wealth as well, and shown commitment to have continued dialogue on trade, investment, climate change and health as it was earlier. So do you think that it is going to happen soon between Pakistan and the United States?
Faisal, from Pakistan's national security and national interest perspective, it is in our national interest that we should have a good relations with the United States. And at the same time, we should also balance out our good relations with China. And there's no harm in having a very good relation with all the great powers and all the regional powers and all the regional countries. So as long as we have a good relations with many countries, we will have a more diplomatic leverage. So in that context, Pakistan, there is an opportunity which has been created by the leaning of the United States towards Pakistan, and the opening has been provided by our cooperation on counterterrorism efforts. So in that context, there are many avenues of cooperation which needs to be explored. And I believe that on its face value, there are many opportunities which even the United States also wants to engage. While we should not narrowly see the US outlook towards India as a zero sum between India and Pakistan, if we can just for a while disengage and we should have our enduring bilateral relation with the United States, I think that would accrue us more benefits. While the United States can continue to have its bilateral relations with India and a wider Indo-Pacific strategy where it fits in, if we can accrue maximum leverage from the US foreign policy and having a bilateral relation with Pakistan, having a cooperation on its economic development and the counterterrorism efforts, military-to-military cooperation.
But Dr. Waseem, what about the containment of China policy under which India is getting more leverage from the United States, and that's why the United States put lots of sanctions on Pakistan's defense and military capabilities, including the military aid, training, weapons, missile program, any concrete US policy dimension that tell us actually the importance of its relations with Pakistan and the US seriousness in eradicating terrorism from the overall region of South Asia?
So far, ever since President Trump took power, we are just waiting for its new national security strategy to be out. However, the Trump's national security strategy of 2018 is, I think, an open book for all of us to read and understand what they actually meant for overall South Asia between Pakistan and India, and how the India was supposed to be given a lead role for China containment policy. That's a fact. And I'm sure by and large it will be something similar of the new US national security strategy, which should be issued in a few months' time. So in that context, US has a greater role for India in the containment of China, while we through our diplomatic skills can still exploit the opportunity which has been provided to us by the counterterrorism cooperation, and still can have a leverage with both China and the United States. And we have done it in the past. So let's exploit this opportunity and let's exploit our diplomatic skills and balance out relations with.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Let's exploit these opportunities which are available. Dr. Wasi, what about the recently approved $397 million or the $400 million for oversight of the Pakistan's F-16 fighter jet fleet, including its objectives, monitoring mechanisms, historical in context, and the regional security impact. Do you not think that it's a gain to please India to not to use such assets against its prime adversary and restrict them to counterterrorism domain, or it should be categorized as the US counterterrorism assistance?
Exactly. You know, when we see the history of this F-16, so it started in 1980 when Pakistan acquired under Reagan administration. And there, you know, since then we saw the inconsistency in that. For example, that after 80s when, you know, this Afghanistan saga or Afghanistan invasion that was done with that. And after that, there was a Pressler Amendment and sanctions imposed on Pakistan. Then after 2001, then Pakistan was needed, and for that there was a resumption of this F-16. And we also see that recently there is also an inconsistent pattern with regard to these F-16 provisions. I think that these F-16s, there is an oversight mechanism, and oversight mechanism restrict Pakistan to only counter-terrorism and with reference to Afghanistan. But I think that there should be a policy based on justice. On the one hand, US is providing weapons, sophisticated weapons, ammunition to India, cutting-edge technology to India. And on the other hand, you know, last President Biden, he imposed sanctions on Pakistan for allegedly for our missile program.
Not twice, not thrice, it's the 6 times.
Exactly.
6 times against Pakistan.
Exactly. If United States is serious to, you know, for the regional stability and to have peace in South Asia, I think there would be a policy which would be based on justice, and principled stance should be taken with regard to.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. But in international relations, we have to search justice, really. Dr. Tauqeer, recently, the US President Trump first administration's senior director for South and Central Asia and its National Security Council, and now the senior fellow and the director Indo-Pacific Security Program at the Center for a New American Security, CNAS, Ms. Lisa Curtis, defied the Biden administration principal deputy national security advisor John Finer's claim that Pakistan missile program was directed at the US, and acknowledged that Pakistan's strategic focus remained on countering India due to their historical 3 wars and all others, and said that US must build on recent convergence on the counterterrorism domain. So how do you see that, this important, because Lisa Curtis has a very important position at that time, now also, and she was associated with the Trump last administration.
Yeah, and Lisa Curtis is also talking about a very important aspect closer to Pakistan, you know, which is again based on
very
reality.
Brief, because we have run short of time.
Yeah,
so
which is again based on the reality. So I believe that, you know, that acknowledgement that Pakistan's defense posture is on the right side, which is usually misinterpreted in the international media. This is an endorsement that Pakistan's you know, security apparatus is meant for India. It's not for the US space, which was earlier in the Biden administration, it was claimed. So it is again an important evidence that the strategic stability aspect within South Asia, which Pakistan has been able to rightly create in balance of power, is the endorsement, getting endorsement from the United States. From
definitely, you are absolutely right. But Dr. Awais, very brief, that whether we are getting any sort of endorsement against these terrorist organizations, because Pakistan has the major interest to act against all those who are actually inflicting terrorism on Pakistan from the Afghan soil, like BLA, the TTP, the Majid Brigade, Hafiz Gul Bahadur Group, and BRA, and all others in Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. And then United States' prime interest is to act against the Daesh, ISKP. So do you think that this is kind of a conflict of interest? The US is not going to be more interested to take action against all those groups, which Pakistan actually interested to have that?
I think that the challenge lies in this misplaced or misaligned priorities with regard to these terrorist organizations. Recently, there is a diplomatic win. We can say that these BLA and TTP that has been termed as terrorist organization by the United States. But I think that Pakistan needs to project and United States needs to realize that this is basically the regional terrorist network, whether it's the Majid Brigade, TTP, or BLA or ISIK. They are
and
chips,
that's basically an umbrella which is in the hands of right now TTP.
Exactly. They are chips of the same brick. So they should be treated equally, and the counter-terrorism effort should not be restricted to only one group. So that should be taken the holistic approach with regard to these terrorist organizations.
Definitely, you are absolutely right. Thank you very much, Dr. Awais, for being here in the studios. Thank you very much, Dr. Tauqeer, for your presence. And thank you very much, Dr. Waseem, for your presence online and very elaborative views. Viewers, you have just listened to us. It is no doubt that the global politics is actually changing. So we have to play cards accordingly, very intelligently, and we have to be very cautious when we are showing our cards even. So China is dominating international arena, but United States seems to be that it is squeezing and its role by itself, and that is rather to be the international role, it is going to be a national role, or the order is actually going to be in disorder, and that predictability in ending up into the unpredictability. So with Indian influence within the Trump administration, we have to be very cautious on that, but we have to take each and every step with intelligence mindset, and that is very important. And no doubt that the decisions right now taken by the US administration, particularly when we are talking about the US aid suspension, when we are talking about the recent visa restrictions or the such kind of moves, are actually undermining Pakistan-US relations in between. US has to think about that Pakistan has done everything for its own sake, but also aligning with the US foreign policy. And Pakistan-US relations are always very important when it comes to the region. And here we have to take some of the very important aspects. Number one is that there is a trust deficit between the Trump administration and Islamabad, and that must have to be bridged. Number two is that Trump's unpredictable policy, so we have to wait and see and then take the decisions. Indian factor is the linchpin in Pakistan and US relations. Showing cards at the right time is very important, and playing it with the mindset, with the real mindset, that is very important. Then again, there is a very important point, a ray of hope after particularly the Sharifullah's, the Daesh terrorists apprehension, that Pakistan and US has a little window, a ray of hope to have relations, and that could be started through the framework of the counter-terrorism. And in that sense, at the diplomatic level and military to military relations, these are going to be a real-time catalyst of change between the bilateral relations between both the countries, because the best and the good relations between Washington and Islamabad are inevitable to have real-time stability and peace in the region. So we have to work hard to have these relations, because ultimately we have to balance these relations between Pakistan and China, and that is inevitable for Pakistan's progress, development, peace and stability in the region. This is all from today's Foresight. It's time to sign off. Allah Hafiz.